Celluloid Ghosts. Top 10 Lost Films by Dark Corners Reviews. Yeah, we've watched this channel before, so we will just go in. Also, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps me a ton. This is the best thing you can do to support me. And yeah, we'll go in. We'll go in. We'll go in. I probably have to move over because I don't want to block the movies, or at least the pictures a little bit. That is not nice. We don't want to. We do not want to do this. We do not want to do this. Right? We do not want to do this. Right? Anyways, we'll go in. We'll go in. I'm curious. Probably know a few of those that are already on here. I'll be real. Probably London Before Midnight, was that what the one, right? So yeah, we'll go in. We'll go in.
These days, when films are available on a variety of media, and when, if you can't find a film online, it's like being plunged back into the dark ages, it's hard to understand even the concept of lost films. During the silent era, a film was treated like a stage play. When people stopped coming to see it, it closed. Why would you store an old film when new ones were coming into the Nickelodeons every day? For a long time, no one considered that film might have any cultural.
I find it so interesting how that has just flipped, right? Now everyone is just preserving stuff, right? We have like huge archives of like shows, movies, video games, right? Everyone tries to preserve something. Even the most modern movie is now somewhere preserved anywhere, right? Even the most dog shit movie, right? It's like so interesting how we moved on from that. I mean, it's kind of sad that they were essentially treated so disposable. That is, I think that's very unfortunate, because yeah, it is part of, right? It is part of history, right? It's like the same with movies, with books, right? A lot of books have not been preserved because nobody copied them, or they burned, or were destroyed, right? Right, big libraries burn and like only copies, right? Because remember back then they literally had to like write the book bar for bar, word for word, to copy it. So that's pretty interesting. Yes, Poke, it's a lost world. Yeah, a lot of like stuff that would be interesting to know is just gone. It's pretty unfortunate.
Significance, and certainly no one foresaw the home video market. Add to that the fact that the nitrate film stock was highly flammable, and when improperly stored became actively explosive, and not storing it actually seems like a pretty good decision, but it's cost us.
Early Walt Disney animation Little Red Riding Hood, 1922, found in London Film Library in 1998. Interesting. Also, hi Cricket, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hello. But yeah, it's interesting, right? A lot of animation movies are also gone. I wonder what I still have in all the... I love his t-shirt. Yeah. I wonder what I still have as on VHS, right? Because most of those, I think pretty much all of those are still functional because I cleaned them, right? You can literally buy a machine that specifically cleans VHS. So that's pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna head out right now. Take care, Screaming Eye. Bye-bye.
Dear. By a conservative estimate, 80% of all films made pre-1930 are lost, and most will never be seen again. Some of them are much sought-after masterpieces by big-name directors, others are wholly forgotten, and no trace remains that they ever even existed. With so many thousands of films to choose from,
Roscoe Arbuckle's own A Reckless Romeo, 1917, found in Norwegian Film Institute in 1998. So that, like, look at this. Released in the 20s. No, in the 10s. Right? And then found again almost at the 2000s. That is so interesting. That is so interesting.
Doing a top 10 is patently ludicrous. So here's ours. The top 10 lost films of interest to us, and hopefully to you, the Dark Corners audience. Frankly, I could fill a whole top 10 with lost Lon Chaney films, but that would kind of defeat the object, so we've limited ourselves to one. But which? Who wouldn't want to see one of the 6 films that Lon Chaney directed himself? Or Tower of Lies, directed by Victor Sjöström, who had already directed Chaney to great acclaim in He Who Gets Slapped.
Not that again. He is everywhere. He who gets slapped is everywhere. Gets slapped, becomes clown. It is still an amazing career change. I wonder. Well, that wouldn't help. That wouldn't help against Friedrich Merz. That man already is a clown. Maybe if I slap him, he becomes an actual politician. Hold up, I have an idea. Or I'll slap Krokorok. Interesting. Anyways.
My personal choice would be Thunder, Chaney's last silent, made when he was at the peak of his powers. But because it would be pretty disingenuous not to include it, we've gone with the popular choice. London After Midnight is by far the most sought after.
Yeah, makes sense. I was already expecting it to be on the list, right? I feel like if you create a list about lost movies, I think that one you can't miss that one, right? You can't. You simply can't. That this one is included every single time. It doesn't surprise me.
After of lost films, and for one reason. Chaney's vampire makeup has haunted generations of cinema goers, even in the absence of the film itself. The last known copy was destroyed in a fire in 1967, before the resurgence of interest in silent films might have prompted somebody to make a copy. Many still images survive, as does the original script and the cutting continuity, which are surprisingly different. Also, 2 contemporary novelizations, and all of these sources were used by Turner Classic Movies in 2003 to create a reconstruction. The film was remade in 1935 by its original director Todd Browning as Mark of the Vampire, featuring Bela Lugosi, but it's a disappointing film that never rises above its ridiculous plot. But Chaney had a way of grounding his director's more ludicrous ideas, and this was the most successful of the 10 films they made together, so maybe there's a chance that the film could be as good or almost as good as those tantalizing pictures suggest. The good news is that London After Midnight.
Here's the thing. Would they want to God Bela Lugosi is hot? You no gooning in my chat. Stop it. I think it inspired the design of the Penguin in Batman Returns. Might actually be. Actually, now that you mention it, there are similarities. Sure. I wonder how people. Okay, so I wonder how people would Would somebody ever pick up the original script and make a movie out of it? Like, the problem is, even if somebody now picked up the script and redid the movie, I feel like it wouldn't turn out well. Honestly, I feel like it wouldn't turn out well. Because, well, we know modern Hollywood, and things never turn out well. Anyways, we'll look.
Midnight was a big release by a major studio that went around the world. There is certainly a chance that there is a print still surviving somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered. But not all lost films have the benefit of scripts, production pictures, or big studio funding. The majority we know little about, and they need to have something special to stand out from the throng. A captivating story in front of or behind the camera, or some historical significance. A good example would be Shanaky's Tales, an Irish film produced by Mark Sullivan in 1916. In his book Missing Reels, essential reading for anyone interested in lost films, Harry Waldman describes the film as a series of stories based around the old Irish storytellers known as Shanachys. Tales of giants and goddesses, fairies and the Hound of Ulster. We may never know more about it than that, but doesn't it sound good? Sometimes a single line will capture your imagination. Spanish film The Other, based on the novel by Eduardo Zamaquar, is a story about a man who writes letters to a dead woman which he leaves on her grave where...
That's kinda It's kind of depressing. That's kind of depressing. And there's no FYI, like 90% of movie scripts tonight I haven't read through. So we're world of opportunities and ties. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this movie, like this script was turned to a movie, right? We just don't have the original movie. That's the thing.
They turn into white butterflies. For that image alone, I want to see this. The Italian epic Satana from 1912 is interesting for its influence. It's a four-part story of heaven versus hell, ranging from creation to the present day, that influenced D.W. Griffith's Intolerance, Thomas Ince's Civilization, and Carl Theodor Dreyer's Leaves from Satan's Book, among others.
Now that is one I'd actually be interested in looking at. Now that's one that's actually interesting. That I would find interesting. Huh. That's pretty cool. Huh. Somebody cooked. I guess they definitely cooked back then. Regardless.
Some of the film does remain, but to find the rest of it would be to restore an irreplaceable chapter in film history. But we've gone with a film which has an interesting story behind the camera. Not that the on-screen story of Fuerza y Nobleza sounds boring. It's a four-part serial made in Spain in 1917, partly inspired by the success of the Machiste films in Italy, following the adventures of a heroic strongman as he tries to restore the rightful heirs to a throne. But what makes it interesting is that it starred boxer Jack Johnson. Johnson was the first African-American heavyweight champion, breaking the colour bar that had existed in the sport, triggering riots.
Not bad, not bad. Interesting. And the first one of that, not bad. Bro is a milestone, so to speak. DW, my favorite racist. Crazy work. Wait, I'm not your favorite? How dare you? Anyways.
The film was made after he fled the country, having been sentenced to a year in prison on charges which are almost universally considered to be racially motivated, and for which he was finally pardoned in 2018. This film is a lost episode in the life of a remarkable man. When we think of lost films, we're almost always thinking about the silent era, but things didn't suddenly change when Al Jolson sang Toot Toot Tootsie. A really surprising 15% of all films made between 1930 and 1950 are also considered lost. Among them is The Man Behind the Mask, a hostage drama directed by Michael Powell, the brilliant director of The Red Shoes, A Matter of Life and Death, and Peeping Tom. There's also The Brown Wallet, a crime drama directed by Michael Powell. COD, a murder mystery directed by
Interesting. Honestly, surprising. A movie from the 30s would be gone. I find that still crazy. I wonder how many movies will be genuinely gone in like another 50 years, right? Yeah, you can say like preserve, like, right? We have the internet and preserve everything. This still doesn't necessarily apply. There's, for example, a lot of video games that were preserved online that are now gone. You can't download them anywhere. It's kind of interesting, right? Peeping Tom is like the first serial killer movie. Ooh, that's interesting. Huh.
Michael Powell. The Girl in the Crowd, directed by Michael Powell. His Lordship, directed by Michael Powell. Born Lucky, My Friend the King, The Price of a Song, The Rasp, Someday, The Star Reporter.
Especially with like considering that the more something gets preserved, right? The more something gets preserved, in my opinion, straight up the worse it gets, right? Because like here's the thing, because like I don't know, it's difficult to say. There won't be movies in like 20 years, I think. I think movies will continue. I just think that the way we're consuming them will soon be gone. So what I believe that cinemas won't exist anymore in 50 years. Because like look at it, Flappy Bird is lost, essentially, yeah. Because, like, look at this, right? I mean, a lot of the online games are also lost, right? If anybody remembers The Crew, that's lost. That doesn't return anymore. So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. I think cinemas will be gone in 50 years. Because, like, look, we get a movie, right? It is in the cinema or theaters, whatever you want to term you want to use, for like 2 weeks. And next, 2 weeks later, it's on Netflix, it's on Disney Plus, it's on Prime. I think that soon a lot of movies will just be, you just have them online and that's it. Right? You just have them through streaming service and that's it. Video clips will continue. I don't know about full length movies. China is pushing short movies, quote unquote, short dramas, and they're getting more in popularity. I think you might be onto something. Will TV shows still exist? That's the question. I think. I think. I think. That long form content long form media will slowly die out if this continues, because humans just get, yeah, the movies will just get. I think some stuff will definitely die out. I think also that a lot of human made art will die out in a few years.
2 Crowded Hours, all directed by. Bottom line, someone should have been taking better care of the early career of Michael Powell, and he's not alone. The Cat Creeps is the 1930 remake of the silent classic The Cat and the Canary, directed by Rupert Julian, who had directed Lon Chaney in The Phantom of the Opera. The film is Universal's first horror talkie and was also made in a Spanish version, also lost, directed by George Melford, who would direct the famous Spanish Dracula the following year. Fragments of the film survive only because they were recycled for comedy short Boo, which also used bits of Frankenstein and Nosferatu.
Every time Helen talks to a man, Dracula gets him. At this rate, she could never get married because she'd be a widow every 15 minutes.
But we're going east for our number 8 pick. One reason there are so many lost films in these decades is that there was a well-known war in the middle of them, and Japan in particular lost a great deal of films during the firebombing of Tokyo, including the Kingu Kong.
Well, it brought us Godzilla. That's the only positive that came from this, and I guess we stopped the Japanese empire, so to speak. So I guess it brought us anime. We ubu'd them, basically, if you want to call it that. That's pretty much. But that's sad because that's a kaiju movie, and I love kaiju movies. Yeah, I love kaiju movies, and that is unfortunate. That is very unfortunate.
Films. Now, although Wasei Kingu Kongu was made in 1933 and the 2 parts of King Kong appears in Edo in 1938, these are both silent films. Partly for financial reasons, but the silent era did last longer in Japan, where it was tied to traditional theatre by the use of narrators called benshi. And if you get the chance to see a benshi narrated silent, take it. Little is known about the films beyond what can be gleaned from these stills, which, let's be honest, raise more questions than they answer. The first film seems to be a straight spoof. In the later film, however, Kong's size seems to be very inconsistent, and it's possible that this was a film about a normal-sized ape monster that was renamed and remarketed to coincide with King Kong's 1938 re-release. Or not. We simply don't know. Either way, these films are very hard.
Honestly, the only good Japanese movie that includes King Kong, in my opinion, there's not many anyways to begin with, is Godzilla vs. King Kong. The Showa Godzilla. The King Kong suit was pretty interesting, but the Godzilla suit looked kinda horrendous. His face was super flat. It was hilarious though when King Kong just shoved the tree up into his mouth. Just a straight up tree trunk. That was interesting. Like, bro just grabbed the tree and just like, in there it goes. What about Son of Godzilla? That's a horrible movie. the director of the Phantom of the Opera, that guy Lon Chaney said to go to hell. Yep. The thing is, like, the Showa era had pretty good Godzilla movies, but they really tried to cater to more to young teens. So you can tell that that's going on. And then the Heisei era was trying to focus more on adults again, which was, I think, a good decision. Oh boy, and then came Millennium. Jeez.
High on the list of sought-after lost films, but sadly low on the list of those likely to be found. Obviously, it's not just genre films that are missing, and although that is kind of our mandate, we don't want to be bound by it. Erich von Stroheim did not make horror films, but working...
Oh no, there he is again. There he is again! Not Harry!
...for the self-styled man you love to hate was like being in one. During the filming of his epic Greed, he shot in Death Valley in 125-degree temperatures that led to actor Gene Herschel being hospitalized and to the death of a member of the crew. Greed was famously cut down from 8 hours to 2, which is practically a lost film in itself, and von Stroheim's uncompromising attitude meant that none of his films went out exactly as he would have chosen. But he had genuine lost films as well, including his second picture, The Devil's Passkey. But we're talking about The Wedding March, featuring a pre-King Kong Fay Wray and some Technicolor sequences. This was a typical von Stroheim production, vastly over budget, vastly behind schedule, vastly self-indulgent as the director insisted on real champagne, then locked his cast into a closed set with some prostitutes to shoot an orgy. While the cathedral set was so accurate that cameraman Hal Mower got married in front of its altar. Having found it impossible to work within the confines...
That's rather interesting. That's pretty interesting. Okay, Mary in front of it, that's kind of crazy. Son of already sound like awful. It is an awful... See, Godzilla had a son. It's more or less is an adoptive son, but he did have a son in the Heisei era. Godzilla Jr., which then later became Godzilla again because the high levels of radiation. But it was a pretty bad idea back then because it didn't work. That's mostly because Manila looks ugly as shit. It's horrible. You just take a success and decide to replicate to the next gen, not as part of the story, but with the same successful idea. Yeah. Godzilla Jr. Yeah, there's Godzilla Jr. He starts technically out really small in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the Heisei one, not the Showa one. We see him again in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. And then we'll see him again in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, where he even gets killed. There he is. An adult young teen. He's super small in comparison, though.
...of the studio system, von Stroheim had tried his luck with an independent. But as his $300,000 budget ballooned past $1.25 million, and the director still shooting, the film was again taken away from him. After a protracted period of editing and a disastrous preview for a condensed version, the film was released in 2 parts, The Wedding March and The Honeymoon. The Wedding March isn't a lost film. The Honeymoon is. Which is actually more frustrating. Neither film was what its director intended. This is really a case of trying to make 2 finished films out of the footage from one unfinished one. And the reception for The Wedding March...
That cannot end well. Huh? Why would you? How would that work? Crazy. The German you love to hate is Poker streamer name. The Croc you'd like to cook is the Croc's name. It should be Rip Godzilla Jr. Yeah, he was revived because he absorbed all the radiation from Godzilla dying. Because in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, Godzilla dies. He melts. Really interesting. I love those movies. I'm doing good. Just woke up and saw you were streaming. I thought I'd stop in and wish you a great day, night. Thank you. I hope you have a great day or night as well.
had been so poor that The Honeymoon was only ever released in Europe. But imagine watching The Fellowship of the Ring and never being able to see the next 2 films. And in the case of The Wedding March, there's not even a book you can turn to see how it ended. For that alone, The Honeymoon makes our list. As we've already seen, amongst the ranks of lost films are some well-known names. Directors who went on to big things but whose early efforts have been lost. Fritz Lang films have a pretty good survival rate considering the period in which he was working, but his directorial debut is missing. The Half-Caste is a story of a mistreated mixed-race woman played by Ressel Orla, who gets her revenge on the men who have abused her. Reviews complimented the excellent direction and...
So this is German. All of it. All of it. Interesting. It says Halbblut, Half-Blood. The story of 2 men and 1 woman in 4 acts. And yeah, that's it. And then we have Personen, so people, right? Or half-cast, I guess. But like, regardless. And then here's the director. Here's the people that acted in it. Yeah, not too complicated. Not too complicated. All these Austrian people. Yep.
Flawless technical treatment. Ernst Lubitsch is another German director who made it big in Hollywood. Films like To Be or Not to Be and Ninotchka benefiting from the Lubitsch touch. But lost film Intoxication seems to show a very different side to the director. Adapted from Strindberg's There Are Crimes and Crimes, the film is about an author who wishes his child dead and then, when the child actually dies, finds himself a suspect. A Woman of the Sea is another adaptation of a literary classic, and this time we get 2 big names for the price of 1. Because although the film is directed by Joseph von Sternberg, 3 years before his classic
Joseph von Sternberg. Yeah.
The Blue Angel, it was produced by Charles Chaplin, the only film he produced which he neither directed nor starred in. The film supposedly contained a 10-minute travelling shot, which remained the longest ever filmed until 2002's Russian Ark. Unfortunately, Chaplin hated the finished film, making this the only film on our list which was lost on purpose. It was never released, and in the early 30s Chaplin had the negative destroyed so he could reclaim production costs. But, big though all these names are, when it comes to big name directors, there's only one place you can end up.
Good evening.
In a 50-year career, there's only one question mark in Alfred Hitchcock's CV, 1919's The Mountain Eagle. The film was a co-production between British company Gainsborough and the German company Emelka, and starred German Bernhard Goetzke, American Nita Naldi, and
Bernhard Goetzke. Interesting. Damn, I wanted to see the Charlie Chaplin movie. Well, he does apparently. Goodbye.
Englishman Malcolm Keane. The story of a scandalous love affair amongst hillbilly folk was partly shot in the Alps, and production encountered a problem when it snowed one night, and Hitchcock was forced to ask the local fire department to clear away the snow with their hoses. The director would let...
Interesting. Also, goodbye, OBS. Thank you. Chaplin did insurance fraud. That is rather interesting. It's always good to have insurance companies have a taste of their own medicine. Rather interesting.
Later remember it as being a bad film, but good or bad, completing Hitchcock's filmography wins it a place on our list. The German Expressionist film has become a byword for the best horror cinema of its time, with masterpieces like Nosferatu, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and The Golem leading the field. When we talk about Expressionist cinema, we're almost always thinking of the 1920s, post-Caligari, but supernatural subject matter and themes of fate, fantasy and death exist in earlier German cinema. In fact, Paul Wegener's 1920 The Golem is the 3rd film the director made with that title, featuring the living statue of Jewish legend, and the third film in which he played the title role. About 3.5 minutes of the 1915 Golem survive, enough to make us wish that the rest did, but also...
Well, he certainly walks like one, stiff and all that stuff. But yeah, makes sense. I'm sad my books are lost during transit. Huh? Did you forget them? Lose them? How do you lose books? Well, I lost a jacket once. And a sports bag, so I guess, never mind.
Lost is the 1917 horror comedy The Golem and the Dancing Girl. Perhaps the most famous of these pre-Caligari horrors is Wegener's 1913 film The Student of Prague, co-directed with Danish director Stellan Rye. We're talking about lost films, but Rye is a lost director, his career cut short when he died of his wounds in a French prison camp 4 months into the First World War. Of the 13 films he directed, only 2 remain, and one of those is incomplete. Amongst the losses, and there are several we could have mentioned, is A Midsummer Night's Dream in Our Times, an updated retelling of Shakespeare's classic which seeks to wrest it from its stage origins by the use of ambitious effects and natural settings. But our choice is Ole Brandis's Eyes, a variation on the Faustian theme about an artist who sells a painting to a mysterious stranger in exchange for the ability to see people as they really are. The results shock and horrify him.
Alexander Moisey, star of All Bandits. All Brandis. Eyes. Interesting. Okay, what happened to Germany? They were making so many classic movies early, and now we have Paul Roland Emmerich. Many things. Right? You also have to consider that, we also were at one point at the top of our game when it comes to industry, and now look at us. We're barely 14th anymore. So yeah, the Germans had a fall. We had a fall off, and especially a hard fall off during the 2010, starting 2015. So there's that.
Particularly when he looks in the mirror. The blending of psychology, fantasy, and fate points the way for German cinema for the next 2.5 decades and shows the influence that Rye had in a career that lasted barely 2 years. Film historian Georges Sadoul credited Rye with helping German cinema to discover a style by turning towards legends of the Middle Ages, based on the splitting of the personality, the power of fate.
Can I say something? I'm gonna say it. They already do it better with the costumes than they did do it now. Like, the costumes look a lot more authentic here already than they now do in modern slop like Rings of Power and shit.
Sudden setting free of magical powers and the annihilation of apprentice magicians by obscure forces carelessly unchained. This being Dark Corners, we will be looking at a vampire film somewhere in this list, but when you say vampire in the silent era, you may not be talking about the blood-sucking monsters that spring to mind today. Vampires, or vamps, could mean seductive women, luring weak-willed men away from their marriages.
That is rather interesting. That's rather interesting. Luckily, that wouldn't work on me. I'd marry the vampire, in this case.
And the undisputed queen of the vamps was Theda Bara. Her name an anagram of Arab death. Her real name was Theodosia Goodman, which is an anagram of good smoothie, Adam. She personified a certain type of 1910s sex symbol, the sort of woman men lusted after but were glad to see die at the end of the film. And her films...
Interesting. It's Poke's girlfriend? Certainly not. I have a different type. Certainly not here. Smash. That's fine. Not in my case.
had titles like When Men Desire, When a Woman Sins, or The She-Devil. She sprung to prominence in 1915's A Fool There Was, but was practically washed up 4 years later when the trend that created her passed and Fox terminated her contract. Her films are reflective of the time in which they were made in a cultural sense as much as a cinematic one, and while it's easy to say that her acting has not aged well, it's unfair to judge someone when so little of their career remains. Of the 40 films she made, only 6 survive. Amongst the lost is Salome, in which Barra played the biblical princess who dances for the head of John the Baptist. Also Sin, which, despite the title, was described by Motion Picture World as quite unusual and artistic, which didn't stop it from being banned in Ohio and Georgia.
Ohio? Oni-chan. Fox existed during those times, so it would seem. Holy fuck, that's so old then. That is so old. It's also like, honestly, the roles haven't changed much in what the roles women play. Of course you have a lot more, how do I say it? Of course you have a lot more, what do you call it? I don't know, a lot more girl bosses now, but still, not much difference. Them all the men that carry simp for her. Wait, yeah, a lot of people. I can't imagine that.
Georgia. But if you could only have back one of Barra's lost films, it would have to be Cleopatra. Made in 1917 when she was at the height of her fame and costing a...
Here's a shocker, kiddos. Here is a shocker. Cleopatra is white. You heard that right. Cleopatra is white. I know this may come to a surprise, but that woman is white. Crazy, huh? She is white. Because people love to say that she's actually black. Nope, that woman is white. She is Greek. Greeks are white.
Then massive $500,000, the film was a huge success, despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy over Barra's revealing costumes. The few seconds of the film that remain give us only a hint. Local censors made their cuts, and when the Hays Code arrived in Hollywood in the 30s, the film was deemed too obscene to be shown at all. A puritanical attitude.
How do you know that? We don't even know how she looks like. We have sculptures. That's the closest we can get. And also we can trace back her cultural heritage. We can trace back where she's from. So there's that. I'm shifting to digital books now. Makes sense. Yeah, I see that. Why not? And I know this might come as a surprise, but you are black. I guess I'm black now. Horrible. What is that dress?
That may explain why so few of her movies survive. During the film, Cleopatra has 50 costume changes, a record that stood until Elizabeth Taylor played the role in a film directly inspired by The Lost Silent, which went on to bankrupt Fox. So perhaps Theodosia Goodman had the last laugh on the studio that sacked her. Literary adaptations are as old as cinema itself, and in fact, one of the most recent rediscoveries in the ranks of lost film is the earliest known version of a Charles Dickens story. And of course, one of cinema's most enduring images comes from Georges Méliès' mashup of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. 17 years later, this British version of Wells's The First Men in the Moon became the first feature-length science fiction movie. And the ranks of lost film are packed with equally enticing...
Ooh, that's orange. That's also one that I would watch. If it existed, that is.
...literary adaptations, so that it actually becomes a bit of a chore picking just one. Alice Guy Blaché, who directed the first ever story film in 1896, later adapted Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum, of which only one reel now survives. Spanish director and special effects pioneer Segundo de Chaumont directed Gulliver in the Land of the Giants in 1903, and 7 years later his fellow countryman Narcís Coyas directed the first version of Don Quixote. Later adapted by Hammer Films with Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee and Ursula Andress, the first British version of H. Rider Haggard's She was made by Barker Motion Photography in 1916. All interesting, all lost. As a Sherlock Holmes fan, George Pearson's A Study in Scarlet is very tempting. The screen's first British Holmes and the first cinematic adaptation of the...
Okay. The Study in Scarlet. Interesting. Okay, but I mean, you should have told people to save these movies. I had nothing to do with it. Damn, that's a mustache. Mustache. Interesting. See, the thing is, like, it's kind of sad that these movies are gone, right? Though I wonder how many of those movies we still have the scripts of, right? Because at least something remains, right? And the script can still be preserved. So we know that these movies existed.
Story that introduced the world to Conan Doyle's celebrated sleuth. On the other hand, Watson isn't in it, and Holmes himself appears oddly late in the day and is played by an auditor rather than an actor because he looks like one of the story's illustrations. After much deliberation, we've gone with Maurice Tourneur's Treasure Island. Like his son Jacques, who would direct Cat People and Night of the Demon, the elder Tourneur had an eye for an image, and the still pictures that survive make this another much sought-after lost film. It also features Lon Chaney in not one but two supporting roles, as Mary the Pirate and Blind Pew, Shirley Mason as the only female Jim Hawkins, and Charles Ogle as Long John Silver.
Ah, the classic. That classic of using women for young boys. Or girls for young boys. Whatever. Interesting. Lost Monsters.
And as long as we're talking about Charles Ogle, the actor played the creature in the earliest version of Frankenstein in 1910. But there is another lost version from 1915 called Life Without a Soul. The character names are different, and the Doctor is described as bringing a statue to life, which sounds more like the Golem than Frankenstein, but apparently this is an adaptation, albeit a loose one. And Frankenstein's monster isn't the only member of the Universal horror family to have existed pre their more familiar incarnations. Dracula, the Wolfman, and the Mummy all made their film debuts before Lugosi, Karloff and Chaney Jr. took up the torch. Whether Dracula's death is the earliest version of Bram Stoker's story is unknown, but the Hungarian film does seem to...
Holy fuck, that is freaky. That is a freaky picture, jeez. Use AI to recreate them. I don't know if that would be such a good idea. I think depending on what you use, it might also come out really funky. Life Without a Soul sounds like, I have a soul. I have a soul. I do have one. Why are all the women so hot? I have no idea. Well, women are usually the more pretty ones. I like cute and pretty women. The latest Dracula, I'm not surprised.
To be the earliest appearance of the character, predating Nosferatu by 1 year. Surviving evidence suggests that the film was set in an asylum based around a woman having visions of the vampire, unsure whether they are real or not, making it more related to Cabinet of Dr. Caligari than Dracula itself. It should be noted, rumours persist that a copy of this does survive in a Hungarian archive. Egyptology was a popular interest in the 1910s, and there are more silent mummy films, some lost, some surviving, than any other.
Is that a mummy? Crazy. Well, want to tell us the Earth isn't flat as well? Go ahead, explain. Look at a few pictures. Then you know. Look at... You want to know how the Earth isn't flat? Gravity. There we have it.
The classic horror character, going back at least as far as Georges Méliès's 1899 Cleopatra's Tomb. Also of interest would be The Vengeance of Egypt, described by film historian Dennis Gifford as the first feature sold purely on the strength of its horror, and described in its own publicity with the phrase, "Its mighty realism will hold the audience in a hypnotism of attention." Pick one? How about The Mummy from 1911? This mummy is brought back to life with electricity, resurrecting as a beautiful girl. A synopsis from moving...
The Gooners. The Gooners. Majority Egyptian aren't black. Yeah. Yeah, but some people are like, we was building pyramids and shit. That's the problem.
Picture world describes the action. As soon as she is released, the mummy makes violent love to Jack.
Now that Rule 34 in the olden times, olden ones with olden notions. That is crazy. Mummy wakes up. Sex.
Don't remember that from the Karloff version. Wolfblood of 1925 is generally acknowledged to be the earliest surviving werewolf movie, although he doesn't actually become a wolf. But the first ever was 1913's The Werewolf, a tale of murder and reincarnation in which a Native American woman becomes a wolf to avenge the death of her lover. And of all these early versions of classics, that's the one we've picked for our number 2 slot, simply because I like the story, which again survives via a synopsis in the Universal Weekly.
Also, mummy sex. I just realized that. That sounds like a different kind of movie. Surely, Ghost Shade. Also, hi, how are you doing? Are we doing well? Surely. That does sound like a different kind of movie. Mummy FU, is that reverse? Is that really? Is that really? Well, she's alive again, so is it really? You know? Is it? I mean, she is alive again. Anyways.
Like Lon Chaney, we could fill a whole top 10 with the lost films of director F.W. Murnau, whose classic Nosferatu came close to being a lost film in itself, and any one of them would be worthy of the top spot. His early career is almost entirely gone, and many horror fans would pick Janus Head, Murnau's adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's
Remove the J. F.W. Murnau is Poke's dad? Certainly not. Certainly not. I don't know this man. Certainly not. It's also like Nosferatu's bald. Who's scared of a bald man? If you call me bald, I will get you.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The Expulsion fits into the genre of peasant drama, from which 2 of Murnau's best films come. Whilst
look, those are those are the movies of for your kind, peasant movies. But he was German, so I have multiple dads, multiple nicknames. Oh yeah, I can add a new nickname. A viewer called me Bell Pepper. Yeah, I remind him of a bell pepper. Anyways, moving on.
Saturnus is a trio of cautionary tales, probably influenced by the Italian film Satana that we looked at earlier. The Hunchback and the Dancer, Maritza, the Smuggler's Madonna, the list goes on. But if someone asked me what single lost film I would most want to see, if I could only have one, I would pick Four Devils. When it was made in 1928, Murnau was on a roll, coming off The Last Laugh, Tartuffe, Faust, and Sunrise, my favourite silent film.
Faust? Trauma. I have a trauma response. I had to read it, at least part 1. I had to read part 1, and this man, okay, this man, Goethe wrote a retard. I swear to God. I swear. I had to read this during high school. Wasn't too fun. Wasn't too fun. I can't recommend. Can't recommend. Certainly not. Poke the wig wearer. I am the wigged. Anyways.
At the first Academy Awards ceremony, Sunrise was given an award for being a unique and artistic achievement, the only film ever to be given that honour. In 1967, Cahiers du Cinema described it as the greatest single masterwork in the history of cinema. The idea that another film of that quality might be out there somewhere waiting to be discovered is maddening yet exciting. Like Sunrise, Four Devils starred Janet Gaynor and was made on the Fox backlot with all of the studio's resources at Murnau's disposal. As with London After Midnight, a reconstruction has been done.
Damn, the cake is crazy. I'd go that cake is crazy. Would I be able to see my reflection on your shiny bald head? Is it reflective? Oh yeah, you can. It's I'll allow you specifically to play tic-tac-toe on my head. Just get the black marker. Poke the bald slime Sumex enjoyer. Sure, GT. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Make Poker eat Faust again. I will not read that again. It was so horrible. I had to read a different book as well. That wasn't great either. Right? The other book that I had to read was just about an unk who had no bitches. Joe! Thank you! He has become a member again! Woohoo! That goes into the poker fund and the poker plan. Thank you. Appreciate it. Finally. Finally. That took a while. Oh, yeah. That took a while. Working again! Yeah, let's go!
But as well as the flat, stagey still photographs, we have the production drawings of Robert Hulf, which give a much more accurate idea of the look and atmosphere of the finished film. But even these cannot recreate the extraordinary camera work talked about in contemporary reviews. Variety saying, Murnau has given the Four Devils a ring entrance that will set every acrobat in the world on fire when seeing it. The climax featured a triple somersault through a ring of fire, filmed with, in Murnau's words, a sort of travelling crane with a platform swung at one end for the camera, called the Go Devil. All that remains of the trapeze scenes is one photo. Taken by the art department to document the set, the shot used a long exposure, accidentally capturing these ghostly blurs of movement on the trapeze.
Interesting. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. You'll be back. Take care, big guy. Okay, if I give 5 membership, will you see a full lecture about Faust? No, I will not. Sorry, I will not. You couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me. I'm not touching this ever again. It was so horrible. I also got a really bad grade for it because I just didn't care.
It's an image that seems almost a metaphor for the tantalizing nature of the lost film. Tantalizing is a word we often use to describe lost films. They may be lost, but that word comes with the possibility they might yet be found, and it seems to place them just at our fingertips, just out of reach. Every year, more lost films are rediscovered as archives realise the value of what they have and collectors loosen their grip on their collections. Most of those rediscoveries won't make this or any other list, but they are all valuable, the good, the bad and the indifferent, as they all add to our sadly incomplete picture of the birth of the movies.
It's also right.
Thanks for watching, and particular thanks to our...
Okay, that is pretty much the end of the video. The problem is, like, it's also that, these movies, they're still part of our culture, right? They're part of history. They're part of, right? They're part of something that's much bigger, right? So having these is, it is to a degree important if you do care about culture. It is very much important. Yeah, maybe some of these show up. Maybe some of these get a movie in the future again, right? If you have the scripts, but otherwise it might be probably quite difficult. And I don't think we'll ever see most of these. That is very unfortunate, but that is likely the case. Anyways, very interesting.